Thank you for tuning in to another episode of Time Traveler's Handbook. Today we are going to be talking about Doctor Who Season 8 Christmas Special, The Time of the Doctor. Spoilers ahead. In this episode, the Doctor and Clara face Trenzalore, the fated final resting place of the Doctor, bringing the story of the 11th Doctor to a close. There are three main points that I wanted to talk about with this episode, and so we're going to break those out into 3 episodes, kind of like what we did with the previous episodes on the Day of the Doctor. The first one that I want to talk about is about the silence. We've talked about them previously, and this episode explores kind of the origins of the silence. Now, before I start, this is mostly just a theory, and there isn't really a lot to support this within the show, but it does make a lot of sense in the context of the silence in the things that we are going to be talking about. So, since this is the final episode featuring the silence, some explanation for the origins of the silence were explained. They originated from the Church of the Papal Mainframe and are essentially priests of that church. They have a built-in function to make whoever sees them forget about them, and this is explained as a genetic modification so that people can confess to the silence and not remember that they had confessed. As a reminder, the Silence were responsible for the creation of Riversong and for the explosion of the TARDIS in the seasons prior to Season 7. The theory about their origin is that they exist out of a bootstrap paradox, which we've explored a bit before, but it's essentially an entity, piece of information, or some other thing that exists but has no origin. Thus, its existence perpetuates itself, and if it did not exist at any point in time, it would not exist through all points in time. Since the Silence are a time-traveling race, we know that they are around from the dawn of man on Earth, influencing decisions that would lead to the death of the Doctor. It is very possible that their existence back in time has led to the creation of the Church of the Papal Mainframe, the place where the Silence was created, and thus lies the bootstrap, that the Silence influenced their own creation. Now, there are a lot of maybes in this theory, and it is mentioned that the Silence that came to Earth were part of a splintered off sect of the Church. That being the main crutch in the theory, there is still the possibility that they have unintentionally progressed technology to the point where the church can exist in the future. Whether they are directly involved in creating themselves or not is impossible to tell, but I would think that it would make sense for the Silence to do such a thing so that they can control all parts of their fate and make sure that they have a hand on their destinies. Another thing to consider is that the Silence were made, not born, which means that something had to influence that creation of them, or perhaps maybe it happened all along. If this theory is correct, or it's somewhere along the lines of correct, I think that's a pretty good use of the bootstrap paradox to create a threat to the Doctor that self-perpetuates itself, kind of like the Daleks and the Cybermen that continue to survive off of their own ambitions and own inevitability. That concludes this episode. Next time we're going to be talking more about Gallifrey. As always, thank you for listening.